Imagine, if you will, a city shrouded in a perpetual, choking fog, where the gaslights cast long, dancing shadows that seemed to conceal unspeakable horrors. This was London, a metropolis of stark contrasts, and within its grimy heart, a monster walked those very streets. He left behind a trail of blood, a legacy of terror, and a name that would forever be whispered in hushed, fearful tones: Jack the Ripper. Before we delve into the chilling depths of this historical enigma, please be advised that this story contains mature themes and descriptions that some may find profoundly disturbing. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. For well over 100 years, his name has remained synonymous with an almost mythical terror. He was a phantom, a spectral presence haunting the dark alleys of Victorian London, a figure who carved his legend not just into the city's history, but into the very psyche of an entire era. But who was this elusive killer, and why, even today, does his story continue to send an undeniable shiver down our collective spines? It is a question that has haunted generations, a testament to the primal, deeply ingrained fear of the unknown, of the darkness that can lurk just beyond the comforting, yet fragile, glow of the flickering lamplight. It is the ultimate unsolved mystery, a puzzle that continues to defy resolution, drawing us back to the gaslit streets of 1888. To truly grasp the horror, we must first transport ourselves to London in the year 1888. Forget for a moment the grand, opulent image of Buckingham Palace and the glittering West End. Our journey takes us instead to the East End, specifically the notorious district of Whitechapel. This was a world entirely apart, a stark contrast to the city's wealth, a labyrinth of narrow, perpetually grimy streets, teeming with overcrowded tenements and steeped in desperate, grinding poverty. Life here was not merely difficult, it was a constant, brutal struggle for survival, a daily battle against destitution and despair. This was especially true for women, particularly those like Marianne Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly. These were not merely names to be recited from a history book. They were real women, each with her own complex story, her own fragile hopes, however dim they might have been in the face of such overwhelming hardship. Marianne, a grandmother, was desperately trying to earn a few pennies, a meager sum that might just keep her from the dreaded workhouse. Annie, battling the relentless grip of addiction, saw her life unfold as a series of small, heartbreaking defeats. Elizabeth, a resilient immigrant, was striving against all odds to carve out a new start in a foreign land. Catherine was attempting to mend a life that had been shattered by circumstance and poor choices. And Mary Jane, the youngest of them all, harbored dreams of a better existence, perhaps even a respectable one, a life far removed from the squalor that surrounded her. They were, by every measure, profoundly vulnerable, living precariously on the fringes of a society that offered them little support, often forced into the darkest, most dangerous quarters of the city, simply to survive another day. Then, amidst the squalor and the struggle, the whispers began. A woman found dead in the early hours, her throat brutally cut, her body left in the street. Then, with terrifying swiftness, another, and then yet another. Each discovery was more horrifying, more grotesque than the last, escalating the terror with every passing day. The initial shock that rippled through Whitechapel quickly curdled into a pervasive, creeping dread that seeped into every home. The Metropolitan Police, a force accustomed to petty crime and public disorder, found themselves utterly overwhelmed and woefully under-equipped to confront such a methodical, almost ritualistic brutality. They were, in essence, chasing ghosts. Their investigative methods were rudimentary, almost primitive by modern standards. Forensic science, as we understand it today, simply did not exist. There were no DNA tests, no fingerprint analysis, no sophisticated ballistics. Instead, they relied heavily on often unreliable witness accounts, given in the dim, confusing light of dawn and colored by panic and fear. Their primary tools were the sheer grit of pounding the pavement, knocking on doors, and following up on every fleeting rumor, but the killer, with chilling precision, left precious little behind, save for the unspeakable, horrifying aftermath of his deeds. No clear footprints, no dropped possessions, just the silent, brutal testimony of his victims. The terror that gripped Whitechapel was not confined solely to the murders themselves. It was amplified by a chilling, undeniable pattern that began to emerge with each new victim. The victims were consistently women, all found in the desolate, early morning hours, and all subjected to a grotesque, almost surgical mutilation. This was not merely murder, it was something far more sinister. It was a profound statement, a violation that extended far beyond the act of taking a life, a desecration of the human form that spoke of a deep-seated depravity. The public, already living on the precarious edge of desperation and poverty, was gripped by a fear so profound that it seeped into every alleyway, every darkened doorway, every corner of their existence. Mothers, consumed by dread, kept their daughters indoors, locking their doors and windows against the unseen menace. Men, walking the streets, instinctively kept their hands in their pockets, clutching whatever meager weapon, a knife, a stick, a heavy coin purse, they could find for protection. Every stranger encountered became a potential suspect, every fleeting shadow a harbinger of potential threat. The very air of Whitechapel became thick with suspicion and paranoia. And then, as if the horror could not deepen further, came the letters. Taunting, chilling missives, penned in crude, often misspelled handwriting, began to arrive at the offices of the police and various newspapers. They were signed with a name that would forever be etched into the annals of infamy: Jack the Ripper. "Dear boss," one began, boasting with audacious arrogance of his deeds, promising with chilling certainty more to come. Another, perhaps the most infamous of all, the "From Hell" letter, arrived accompanied by a small box containing a human kidney, allegedly and disturbingly from one of his victims. Was this a macabre, twisted joke designed to mock his pursuers? A deranged, yet undeniable confession? Or was it a calculated, psychological act, meticulously designed to sow even greater panic and despair among an already terrified populace? These letters, whether genuine or the work of a copycat, irrevocably transformed the killer from a nameless, faceless horror into a malevolent, almost theatrical entity, a self-proclaimed artist of death who seemed to revel in his anonymity and the widespread fear he had so effectively cultivated throughout the city. They added a layer of psychological warfare to the physical brutality, making the killer seem omnipresent and all-knowing. The nightmare reached its terrifying zenith with what became known as the double event. On the night of September the 30th, 1888, two women, Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes, were brutally murdered within an hour of each other. The killer, after attacking Elizabeth Stride, was almost certainly interrupted by a passing cart, forcing him to abandon his work on her body. Undeterred and with chilling audacity, he then moved on, finding Catherine Eddowes. After her murder, he left behind a piece of her blood-soaked apron, discarded near a wall where a cryptic, chilling message had been scrawled in chalk: "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." Was this a genuine clue left by the killer himself? A deliberate diversion intended to mislead the authorities? Or perhaps a reflection of the anti-Semitic sentiments prevalent in some parts of London at the time? The police, acutely aware of the volatile social climate and fearing the outbreak of anti-Semitic riots, made the controversial decision to quickly erase the message. This act, while perhaps understandable in its immediate context, has been debated by historians and ripperologists ever since, as it potentially destroyed a vital piece of evidence. The city, by this point, was not merely afraid, it was paralyzed, holding its collective breath, waiting with agonizing certainty for the next strike, knowing that it could come at any moment to anyone and that no one was truly safe. The final and arguably most horrific act of this reign of terror occurred on November the 9th, 1888, with the murder of Mary Jane Kelly. Unlike the previous victims, she was killed indoors, within the confines of her own rented room. The scene discovered by her landlord was one of unimaginable brutality, a level of savagery that shocked even the hardened investigators who had witnessed so much horror. It was as if the killer, finally unconstrained by the open streets and the risk of interruption, had unleashed the full, unbridled extent of his depravity. The sheer, visceral horror of that discovery marked the grim climax of his reign of terror, a final indelible stain on the fabric of Victorian London. And then, just as suddenly and mysteriously as he had appeared, he vanished. The murders stopped. The taunting letters ceased. Jack the Ripper, the Phantom of Whitechapel, simply disappeared back into the thick, swirling fog from which he had emerged. There was no capture, no confession, no definitive answer, no justice. The ultimate, cruel twist in this macabre tale is the profound absence of a resolution, the monster simply melting away, leaving behind only unanswered questions and an enduring, terrifying legacy. Over the decades, countless theories have emerged, each more elaborate and speculative than the last. Suspects ranging from members of royalty to respected doctors, humble barbers, and even celebrated artists have been put forward. Their lives meticulously dissected and scrutinized in the desperate hope of finding a definitive link, a single thread that could unravel the mystery. But the truth remains stubbornly elusive. The glaring lack of modern forensic techniques at the time, the chaotic and often disorganized nature of the initial investigation, and the relentless, unforgiving passage of time have all conspired to keep his identity a secret. Forever shrouded in the impenetrable mists of history, yet the story of Jack the Ripper endures, captivating and terrifying new generations. It is far more than just a true crime case. It has evolved into a profound cultural phenomenon. It irrevocably changed policing forever, pushing for more systematic investigations, for the very beginnings of what we now recognize as forensic science. But its true, enduring power lies in what it represents, the ultimate unknown evil. The chilling darkness that can hide in plain sight, the terrifying possibility that some monsters simply vanish, never to be brought to justice. In a way, he won. He terrorized an entire city, committed unspeakable acts of violence, and then disappeared, leaving us to forever wonder who he was and if he ever walked among us again. The true horror isn't just in the murders themselves, but in the fact that the monster was never caught, his identity a secret he took to his grave. Or perhaps still carries with him, a ghost in the annals of history. What are your theories on Jack the Ripper's identity? What do you think makes this story so enduringly terrifying, even after all these years? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. If you found this dive into history's darkest corners compelling, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more true crime and mystery content, and check out our playlist on unsolved historical cases. You won't want to miss what we uncover next.